So we're at one of our bread and butter jobs. We do a lot of condominium complexes, and this particular one has got a lot of flowering pears. So a lot of people ask me, why do you prune trees in the first place? What is your objective? What is your purpose for pruning a tree? And that's a really good question. Because if you think about it, if you go out into the woods or out in the forest, the trees out there don't get pruned at all, and they seem to do just fine. Now the problem is that a lot of the places that we work are very tightly constrained complexes, like this condominium complex. And the variety and the species of trees that they choose get too big. They grow too close to the buildings. So if you ask me why are we pruning the trees, there's a number of reasons. Number one, you're pruning for what the tree needs. You need to get out the dead branches, the broken branches, the weaknesses, the diseased or decayed pockets need to be lightened up. Any branches that are too heavy on the verge of breaking. So those are the needs of the tree. But just as important, you've got the aesthetic needs of the complex. The people want the trees to look pretty, they want them to look balanced, they want them to look nice. But that's based upon the locations of where the trees are planted. In this complex, the trees are planted fairly close to the buildings, so we have to trim them away from the buildings. We have to trim them away from the streets so the garbage trucks don't take them out. We got to bring them away from the lights so that the lighting is appropriate. And then we end up having to round the tree over to balance up all the things we have to do. So you've got all these reasons for pruning, and they're all equally important. But at the end of the day, you have to trim the trees to make your clients happy. They've got to appreciate what you did. And if you screw it up and you trim the trees wrong, the long-term ramifications for the damage you do will come back and bite you in the ass. One of the things that we need to do as arborists is to recognize weaknesses and structural defects in trees as we're working. We're doing a lot of these flowering pears. We've got both the Bradford pears and this one's the Chanticleer. And there's a defect in the species that's really bad. They have a real tight growth pattern. And what I see right here is this limb and this limb are pushing very, very hard on each other. And if you look very closely, you can see some stress cracks in through here and what appears to be some potential for this whole thing to possibly be pushed off. Now this right here is quite powerful. The strength in both of these getting bigger and bigger. There's got no place for this to go but to push it apart. Now Lucy says, well, but they're grafted together up there. Well, yeah, they've been rubbing for so long that they have grafted, but that doesn't reduce the pressure down here. So you have to look at a situation and say, what's going to happen or what will very likely happen? And in this case, it's quite clear to me that this is going to push itself apart. And if that splits and causes the main part of the trunk to go down, then the value of the whole tree is going to be lost. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. Lucy was also pretty concerned that the loss of, once I take this out of here, I'll lose 1, 2, 3 pretty decent limbs, and it might leave too big of a hole. This one over here is also rubbing and pushing in the inside. That one's got to come out. So let me go ahead and make these cuts and then we'll see what it looks like. Now it's true, they have indeed grafted and become as one, but the pressure that's being exerted right here is not going to change. So what I got to do is I got to cut this and then cut that and release that pressure on here, and hopefully that will resolve the problem. Also got to get the rest of that out of there. It's difficult to make these cuts in these really tight locations without having your chainsaw slip and damage the bark on what you're working on. There's also a lot of pressure on this. When I was cutting into this one, the pressure was being pushed on it here and it was closing the cut up on me, so I had to actually cut a little bit of a wedge. It allowed me to cut all the way through. You note I didn't cut all the way through and nick this side. And that's what it looks like. That was grafted up to this. You can see it was a pretty solid graft union. Now I've got to get this one out of here, and that's a real tight area. If I got in there with a chainsaw and tried to cut it normally, I would surely damage one of these trunks over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, with the tip of the saw, get the bulk of this out of here, get it down as far as I can, and then I'll probably come in from the front side with a hand saw and clean that up so that I don't damage any of this.